go. You're on.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our 2022 Emergency Preparedness Seminar, coming to you from our Borough Council chambers on Wednesday, March 16th. And we're very happy to bring this program to you in an effort to keep our town on board with all of the emergency preparedness issues that you should be taking care of to keep yourself and your family safe. So we're going to begin. First of all, we have the mayor here. Mayor Mike Sarah is in attendance tonight. Councilwoman Maria Kemp is here.
Turn it off.
Some members of our flood advisory board are also here. So if you have any questions at the end of this session, feel free to email us at oem@pontonlakes.gov.
No, it wasn't up before.
NJ.gov. Okay, oem@pontonlakes-nj.gov if you should have any concerns
HDMI 1 PC.
or questions.
Source button.
Okay, why prepare for disasters? That's a question that everybody has to ask. We prepare because, number one, they can strike without warning. Now, we have a lot of defensive devices in our society today that tell us that a storm is coming, which is terrific. But a real disaster strikes without warning, and that's what we have to be prepared for, because we can prepare all we want for a certain type of event and then find out that another disaster strikes that people are not used to or totally unprepared for. You may have to live for days without power. We've done that in town. We've had this with Ida. We were out of power for a couple days, and we had a storm the year before last where we were without, some people in town were without power for quite a few days, maybe even upwards of over a week. And it's very inconvenient. And I know a lot of people have generators, but portable generators bring their own issues with them as well, such as refueling them often and having the gasoline on hand, which is a danger, and then also the carbon monoxide gas. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. Water, we're going to talk about how much you should have on hand for you and your family, food, medications, communications, and other basic necessities. Being prepared reduces danger and the stress of the incident to you and your family. We all know that when we prepare for something, regardless of what it is, it could be an interview, it could be a doctor's visit. When you know a little bit about what you're going into and what's going to be discussed, it takes the edge off, it takes the stress off, and it makes it much more palatable for you to handle that emergency or that issue, whatever it may be. So be prepared. Prepare your families, especially if you have children. They should know what to do without you telling them what they have to do. This should all be done in advance. So God forbid something does happen, your children as well as you are well prepared in what the plan of action is to be. Mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. I mention it every year, and I drive it home because it's 4 tenets of emergency management. As a community, we've done a tremendous job with mitigation. Our mayor and council has put a tremendous amount of money into the desilting and desnagging of our rivers, and I think the results are positive, very, very positive. We've seen great results in some of other towns around us because of the work that the council has done in the rivers. So I commend them for that. We want to keep that program up, and we also want to alert residents not to dump anything in the rivers. Please do not discharge or dump anything in the rivers, because we work to maintain them and keep them clean, and we can't have people throwing debris, yard debris, whatever it may be, into those rivers as we've cleaned them out.
Can I just add to that?
Yes, absolutely.
So one thing that's new this year is I worked out a deal with the county, and we'll be replacing the 2 footbridges this year. The county's going to replace them with full one-piece units, maybe with no stanchions on the bottom, which will stop the flow, the blockage of a lot of that flow that's underneath there. If we can have that done, that's a big deal. It'll be just one piece across the top with nothing underneath it. So I'm pushing real hard. They think they can make that happen. And that would be a big plus for us, because that is a lot of the times where we get a lot of debris buildup, as you know, underneath those walkways there.
Sure, and that causes turbulence on the sides of the bridge, which makes it even more dangerous. So not having those stanchions, those pillars that the mayor said, will allow that water to run. Also, don't forget the Dawes Highway Bridge is on the drawing board and that's scheduled to be replaced in 2023. So that was good news.
That's a big one,
because we
too.
know that that bridge is a major impediment to the Ramapo River and the people that live along that area down there. All right, preparedness efforts. We're very, very prepared as a community. Our police, fire, EMS, DPW, again, through the efforts of the mayor and council with the financing, we've got great equipment. We have the capabilities, we have the training to do what we have to do. We just need the public to do their part, and then we can certainly assist them. But we must all remember that most of our volunteers are residents. And those residents, many of them, are affected by these disastrous events themselves, for example, flooding. So we might say we have 62 men and women in the fire department, but when there's a disaster such as flooding, we may only have half of those people available at any one time. So yes, we depend on mutual aid, our contiguous communities. We have a county mutual aid plan, and in Hurricane Irene, we actually had the whole county in here helping us to pump basements after the fact during the recovery process. So preparedness, we have all of our Civic ready notifications programs in place. Hopefully you are signed up for that. If you are not, I would suggest that you sign up for the Civic Ready Emergency Preparedness by going to our borough website and just following the prompt on the left-hand side where it says sign up for emergency messages.
So what that means for the new residents that are watching, that's where you get the reverse 911 calls. I get a lot of calls from residents who hear their neighbors got calls and they didn't get calls. Well, the reason they didn't get calls is because they didn't sign up for the program. Once you sign up for the program, you will receive all the emergency notifications that we're talking about now. And you know, at that vital time, they're very important to receive those. So everyone should at least sign up for that.
Exactly, and please don't keep it to yourself. Share it with your family. For example, all of my kids had those numbers as well in Civic Ready. So if the message went out and they have to be out about town or at a store or at school, they would get those same messages that went out. Because that system is set up for immediate broadcasting of an emergency or disaster, which we say can strike without warning. So very important. As a matter of fact, I'm going to mention this as well. We have sons and daughters of elderly parents that live in our town that live away from town. One person in particular down the shore, and this lady came up to me and said, "Can I put my number in your system so I know when there's a problem in Pompton Lakes, I can start driving up here to take care of my mother and father?" I said, absolutely great idea. And I use that example every year because it works. And if the system is designed to handle it, we don't pay by the call. It's just a group rate. So if you feel you want to do that as well, please do so. So that's all part of preparedness. Our schools are prepared. I hope everybody knows that schools by law have to have preparedness plans for everything from A to Z. You name it, they have to have preparedness plans, and they have to be approved. So our schools are our biggest daytime population, as you may know, both with staff and students. We don't have a lot of industry in Pompton or commercial that brings a lot of people into our town during the day. So our biggest daytime again is the students, and we have a lot of concern there and a lot of responsibility, but we have dedicated staff at the schools, and we have great administration, and they're always willing to help and work with us very closely, by the way. Response, that's what we do when people call for help. The thing to remember is this. If lines are out, telephone lines, cellular towers, you're not going to get 911 perhaps, okay? There's going to be no way to reach these PSAPs. That's a probability, and you should be prepared for that and ask yourself, how do I get a message or get somebody to respond to my emergency if the phones don't work? That being landline and cellular. So think about that a little bit and come up with some ways that you could make that happen, maybe by using neighbors or people on bicycles, things that simple, but you might have to go for help instead of call for help, depending on what the emergency is. So you may get a response that way, hopefully you will, but remember emergency services are going to be overwhelmed. When we look out west and we see the Midwest and what they go through, particularly with tornadoes, and I think you've noticed over the last several years, New Jersey has been privy to more tornadoes every year, and it's becoming a concern. So you may call for help, and the help may not be available, and that's dangerous. We do work again with contiguous municipalities. So if somebody lives in a community that's not affected, they'll send their people here. They'll help us out. That plan is all revised every single year. We revise that plan. And we exercise that plan throughout the course of the year. So we have those capabilities. We have a municipal fire alarm system in town, which is still out there and still works. Those are the red fireboxes that hang on the pole. That is a completely independent system from telephone and cell phone. Okay, that's a proprietary system in the borough of Pompton Lights. It's on a battery backup, so it will work if the power is out. And that message, when you pull that red box, comes into police headquarters as well as the firehouse. So it's something that's been there for years. We haven't taken it down or disabled it because it works, and it's just another redundancy in our methods of calling for help. So just be aware of that. And then the last section is recovery. And a lot of people have been through recovery in this town and know that it takes a long time. Just personal recovery. Within your own home, you want to take pictures of all the devastation for the insurance company and document everything. But then it's just the psyche, the psychological recovery that it takes to get yourself back in order. Many people have been through it, and they know what it's like, and it's not fun. So, we bring in counseling services. We've done that in the past. We try to help our residents as much as possible cope with the disaster. We had a lot of church groups in after Irene that came in and helped us out. And not only were they supplying manpower, they were supplying spiritual help as well, which kind of got infused while they were working with the residents, and that's a good thing. So that's recovery, and we paid a lot of money to get rid of a lot of garbage, because as you know, we had dumpsters on every street in Irene. For people, it just overwhelmed our DPW. We had to hire outside contractors, so it's a big deal. FEMA does recoup a lot of our costs, but we have to document, and we do document all of those costs, regardless of what department it is in our borough, because then we make application to FEMA, and it's a 75%, 25% share. So we always apply and get money back to the borough. Although we always don't get what we ask for, we do get money back, which is a good thing. All right, you should be creating a basic emergency plan within your own home and family. All right, decide what you and your family would do for each potential situation. Okay, take a night out on your busy calendar, sit down with your family and say, what would we do? As simple as if there was a fire, if there was a flood, if there was a major accident, if there was a major power outage, nobody had power, and we were told we're going to be without power for a week. What are people going to do? You can't go to the stores in town and shop because they have no power as well. So you have to have contingency plans on what you're going to do. Always have foodstuffs in your home that don't go bad, okay? That you can put in a shelf in a pantry and it's going to be there. And I always have this discussion with my family, my kids in particular, who think because something is past the expiration date on the shelf, it goes bad. It doesn't go bad. It can't be sold after the expiration date. But pasta on the shelf does not go bad. But yet it can be used, in a situation like this, as long as you have gas and gas-fired stove. Meals ready to eat. We mentioned them, MREs. The military uses them. Some people actually have them in their home in case. I don't recommend everybody go out to get them, but you should have non-perishable food that you can refer to if you need it for your home. Draw a floor plan of your home showing potential escape routes. You don't have to really draw the plan if you don't want, but at least practice. I'll give you a quick example, then we're going to move on. Father went out and bought one of those chain ladders that you could throw out of a second-story window for egress in the event of a fire, and he put it in his child's room. It's a great thing, but he never deployed it. Never deployed it. Never threw it out the window. Never said to the young kid, "Climb down the ladder. Let's play a game. We'll climb down the ladder. Climb up the ladder." You don't want the first time that child goes down the ladder to be the time when there's all kinds of things happening behind you. Maybe fire, smoke, a lot of noise. So this is what I'm talking about. When you draw a plan or you come up with a plan, exercise it. Actually run them through it. Tell them where to meet. Like my kids were told to meet by our neighbor's lamppost. In the event they had to get out of the house, things like that. And we discussed that at our fire prevention open house in October, which I believe is October 10th, Monday night, October 10th. 2022. So you're welcome to the firehouse. You know, we have touch a truck, we have games for the kids that are actually exercises. You know, teach them what to do, stop, drop, and roll, and so forth. And then the other stuff, the other disasters we're talking about, we're gonna go over. Choose a remote place to meet in case you're separated. Now, I don't mean in front of your house, but I mean, let's say right now, your kids are in 3 different places in town. If something happened, we pick up our phones, we get nothing. Where do you go to meet? You try to get to your house, the roads are blocked off, you can't get there. Where is another place to go to meet? You should have one set up so that everybody knows to go to either a relative's house, or a friend's house, or the mayor's house.
Yeah, sure.
Okay? And everybody meets up there. So that should be in the back of everybody's head. I know you don't think about it because it's just not something we deal with on a regular basis, but it could very, very happen. Happen. We are so dependent on these devices. Okay, we think they're going to work every single time, and we know there's many times the system is just overloaded and we can't get through. You know, it's up and running, but it's overloaded, and that's a big problem. Have an out-of-the-area phone contact for everyone. I use this example every year. Going back 10 or 15 years ago, we couldn't make calls in town, but we could make long-distance calls out of town. It's weird, but it happens because there's long lines, long-distance lines, and then there's local calling areas. So have an out-of-state relative that people can call, members of your family, in the event you can't call locally. And you'll be surprised, you might get through, but at least everybody's going to try that, and it's a plan, part of your plan. And it works. An emergency plan, know how to shut off utilities. I ask people all the time, you know how to shut your gas off? No. Your water? No. Your electricity? No. It's unconscionable to think that people living in a home don't know how to shut those utilities off coming into your home. They'll call the police in the middle of the night and say, there's water coming in my basement. I don't know how to shut my water off. Take your family down and show them these shut-offs. They're very simple. Okay, they're located in very accessible areas, most of them. And they should know how to do it, including your kids. Not little kids, but, 10 years old and up, I would expect that these kids to be able to handle that. You never know if they're home alone and something goes bad. Of course, you're going to tell them to vacate the home, get out of the house. But I mean, if they know how to do this, then they can shut that off. It's not a problem.
So about 15 years ago, during a flooding event, we did have a house explode and blew the roof completely off the house across the street to the neighbor's house. So it is very important to turn that gas off and that electric off, especially during a flooding event when that's going on. And we, as Al mentioned, we only have a limited supply of people that can come and help. So at the end of the day, you might be stuck, and if you don't know how to do it, it could be a real problem for you. So you want to get those two things off.
We get a lot of calls, people smell gas, natural gas in their home, in the kitchen. Just an example, a couple of weeks ago, someone had a new stove installed. And they came and installed it, and a couple hours later, they smelled natural gas. Well, when they pushed the stove back into its position, they broke the line, flexible line, and the gas was coming out from the home. Natural gas is lighter than air. All you have to do is open all the windows in the house real quick, and then get out. And that natural gas is going to lift, it's going to evacuate the home in natural air currents because it's lighter than air, natural gas, so you don't have to worry about that. Propane, on the other hand, is heavier than air. So if you have a propane leak from a propane grill, you want to call 911, get out of the home, get out the area, and evacuate. Plan for your elderly handicapped relatives. I already mentioned the lady that lived down the shore who had parents that lived in town. All right, so she had a plan, which was great. Friends and neighbors, they all usually look in if they know there's somebody infirm or somebody, that's elderly that lives in their neighborhood, in particular next to them. But they have to be ready to help them in the event they have to be evacuated. They have to have the wherewithal to do that. So they're going to have to get together and make a plan for things like that because they have basic needs addressed. We just had an accident on Hunter Place, which affected the entire senior citizen building, the senior housing over there. There's 100 units in that building. Okay, and when the lights go out, everybody gets stressed, and the blood pressure starts to rise. So we put out an immediate call to all 100. We have the whole building on one calling block. So we put out an emergency reverse call to that building in a heartbeat, and all 100 tenants of that building were notified, okay, within minutes. So we have resources to do that. It happens, but we have plans. You as residents have to have plans as well.
I heard we should go back one thing. You can put your cell phone on those calls too. So if you're at work, and you have your cell phone on you, and there's an emergency going on at Pompton Lakes, you'll get it on your cell phone, which is important. Gives you a time to get home or take care of it or make calls. So cell phones are easily put onto that. I know that how everybody relies on a cell phone, so that's the numbers you really have to put on there too.
Exactly. And the thing it won't do is dial extensions. So if you put a work number and it's not a direct line, it's not going to get through. But you can put text in there. We send out voice, text, and email. So you can put all three in there. You put your email address in there, you'll get it as an email as well. And we recommend that because it works well. In the event it doesn't get through voice, you may get it through the other two methods. All right, check your insurance policies for proper coverage, please. Everybody should know that. Make sure your home is insured for what your contents, the building and contents are worth. A lot of people get insurance and then 10 years later they never up it, they never review it, and they have the same coverage. And things have gone up, costs have come up to replace your home or refurb it, and now there's not enough money there in the pot. All right, so you have to get your insurance looked at, and based on your home evaluation, every so often. So make sure you stay on top of that. We talked about go bags or go kits in your home. You should have one ready to go at a moment's notice. It should contain your basic needs and essentials. Backpacks work best because it leaves your hands free, your arms and hands free. And then you should have a list. What we recommend is keeping a list in the bag of things that should be in the bag. You don't have to leave them in there all the time. But you take the list out before you leave your home and just go down the list, and it'll help you remember your glasses and your medications and your whatever else you need to have. Credit cards, cash. Always have plenty of cash on hand in the event of an emergency, because the ATMs will not work if the power is out. Okay, and if the internet is down, even if the ATMs have power, they're not going to work because they have to talk to the bank. Okay. So these are little things people don't even consider and think about, but they're very, very important. So keep that list right in the bag, have that bag handy, tell your kids where the bags are, your husband, your wife, either way, so that they can grab that bag in the event you have to leave your home and move to another location.
One of the bigger problems we had at the last event was the gas pumps went down because they're run by the internet or the electric. And there were huge lines of people trying to get gas, and they couldn't get gas in their vehicles to go, or their generators or whatever they needed. So it's important to understand that when the internet goes down, that affects everything. It affects banking, it affects the gas stations. Now, there was some new laws passed statewide, right, where there's supposed to be some backup.
Yeah, and FEMA even provided money to a lot of stations at one point to get them with the generators. But some took advantage of it, others didn't. It's a grant program, and I only know of one in town that has a generator. But we do have generators on all of our pumps for municipal operations. All right, items needed. What do you need to sustain a disaster and emergency? Well, it's recommended you should have 1 gallon of water per person for 3 days. All right, that's generally what a person consumes. So 1 gallon per person per day for 3 days. Keep that water in your home, don't use it, but then after maybe a couple months you want to replace it so you keep it fresh. So use that water, put new water in its place, and just get a rotation going on that. But again, like I tell everybody, if you have water that's been on the shelf for a year or a year and a half, it's water. As long as the thing is sealed, it's not contaminated, may not have a good taste. I don't know if it would acquire a taste from the container, but the bottom line is it's going to be water. So don't get rid of it, just throw it out, because it could come in handy if things are bad enough, unfortunately. Pack enough non-perishable food for at least 3 days for each family member, depending on the size of your family. Keep that in an out-of-the-way place, maybe on pantry in the basement, on shelves in the basement, somewhere where it's not going to be used, because when you use it as a routine, you're just going to run through it and not have that stocked, equipment to go to, or supplies, I should say. Include canned and boxed food like tuna fish, anything in canned soup. MREs, we mentioned. There may be no way to cook. Bring a manual can opener. Okay, manual, because if you have no electric, your electric can opener is useless. So I have a manual can opener in my home. I hope everybody does as well.
Then my kids would be starving.
They come in. I never use the electric can opener. I always use the manual can opener. There may be no way to cook unless you keep propane tanks on hand with your grill. And I've actually had people tell me they don't have any propane in the winter because they don't need it. But if that power goes down in January or February, you have to cook something. It's very nice to be able to go up there and fire out that grill. Okay, it may take a little longer to cook, but at least you're going to have some flame, you're going to have some heat, you're going to be able to do some kind of cooking. So I keep propane all the time, a couple tanks in my yard, not in your home, not in your garage, okay, but a detached shed or garage. You don't want to keep propane anywhere in your home. You don't want it in the basement, you don't want it in the garage. Because if it leaks, the house is going to explode, possibly explode. All right, include food and special dietary needs. I can't tell you how many times we open the shelter and we have people come in and say, I forgot my medication. I forgot my special dietary needs because they can't eat the food that we have at the shelter. And we try to make an effort. Our search team, by the way, does an excellent job of running the shelters. They're all American Red Cross trained, and they know what to do. They're very organized. They have a plan. But the bottom line is, when people come in and say I have a special dietary need, we can't address all of those. So you may have to do that on your own. Bring those supplies with you, and then we can do something with them when you walk in. But the bottom line is, we don't have a menu that suits everybody over there, or applies to everybody. So if you have a real dietary need, you've got to take care of that on your own. Some tools and equipment: battery-powered crank or solar radio. They're very cheap. They're sold everywhere: Walmart, Lowe's, Home Depot. I think our hardware store may even have them. And it's a radio you crank to energize it. You don't need batteries, because we all know when you put fresh batteries in the battery, you forget about it, and then a year later when you need them, the batteries are dead. Or they've leaked, and they've corroded the radio, which is not good. So these crank radios are good, because they'll work under any circumstance. Flashlights with spare batteries. Keep those batteries separate. If you don't use that flashlight a lot, don't leave the batteries in it. Keep them next to the flashlight, so then when you need the flashlight, you put the batteries in. Resealable plastic bags and garbage bags. You don't know how important they are during a disaster. You've got to have plenty of garbage bags and sealable bags, maybe for food that you didn't use completely, so you can save it, put it on ice, preserve it. And I'll mention the ice. We do have an agreement finally with Jersey Central Power and Light to provide ice to our residents in the event that they're without power for a certain amount of time. I don't remember what the time.
I think it's 48 hours.
Is it 48 hours?
Yeah.
Hand sanitizer, washcloths, soaps and towels. We went through that 2 years with the pandemic, so I think we have plenty of that stuff on hand. If you don't, keep it on hand anyway. Paper plates, cups, plastic utensils, sanitary wipes, toothbrushes, toothpaste, shampoo, deodorant, and other toiletries. You don't have to have a lot of it, because a lot of it goes pretty far, like shampoo and things of that nature. So just make sure you have some, and if you leave, you take some with you, so you have it available to you, regardless of where you go. Change of clothing, extra pair of shoes and socks for each person. Now, you may know or may be able to tell the length that you're going to be away from your home, depending on what the emergency is. So I would think that if you use good common sense, you're going to know we have to pack a suitcase, or we could just throw some stuff in a bag and take it with us. So think of that. We'll try to give you up-to-date information on what's going on, keep you abreast of the emergency, so you know where the light is at the end of the tunnel, hopefully. Hopefully that'll make it easier for you. Everybody should have a first aid kit with everything that comes in them. Personal items, driver's license, very important. People can't get back into the flood areas if they don't have a license. It's all sealed, secured, cordoned off. ID, prescription medications, we mentioned cash and other necessary cards and paperwork. You'll be notified when to evacuate unless you choose to do so on your own. You may choose to leave your house earlier than the evacuation, when the evacuation is called. So feel free to do so, and you will take care of business much better that way. Know your local evacuation routes out of town, 287, 208, 23, Greenwood Ave, Amber Turnpike. We will give you a heads up which way to go, because if it's an emergency on 287, we don't want you going toward 287. We want you going east toward Bergen County, because the wind is always in this direction, in an easterly direction. We don't want you driving into the plume. For example, if it's a truck emergency or accident on 287, we want to keep our residents safe. So we will give you direction to go if we know where the epicenter of that disaster or emergency is. Okay. Otherwise, if it's just evacuate the town, you're just going to go any route that you're familiar with and maybe in the path in the direction you have to go.
Just jump in there. We've done numerous times evacuation, especially for newer people watching this, of evacuating homes during a flood event. And the way that's going to happen is either our CERT team or fire department or police department is going to actually knock on your door and say, it's time to leave. Okay, that could be 3 in the morning, it could be 3 in the afternoon. They're not going to physically carry you out, but this is your one warning to get out before something serious happens to the home you're in. They're not just doing it as a guess. They're making a good assumption there's going to be real damage to the home you're in right now, and you need to leave. That doesn't mean you're packing your whole house up and getting in your car and leaving. You have a couple minutes, like Al said, to put the essentials together, and then you should be leaving. But, I have a lot of residents call me when they get that knock on the door, do I really have to leave? No, you do really have to leave.
Thank you. Have a place to go if you're ordered to evacuate. Now, whenever we evacuate, we always have the shelter open in advance. Because when we tell people to get out, we have to say the shelter's there if you want it. So we have to have a place for them to go. But it may not be the shelter in our town, because if that's effective on the emergency, we have mutual aid agreements with the other towns. And I have verbal agreements with other coordinators, where I could call right now the coordinator in Bloomingdale and say, I need your help. Right? We need to open a shelter. And they would do that because they're upwind of us. Okay? And perhaps that disaster is coming in one direction. So we have that capability. Wayne, good relationship with them, Oakland, all the contiguous communities. And we meet as a county. All right, our OEM meets with the county, as a county, all 16 towns in Passaic County, to plan on events like this. What do we do if it's bigger than just the one municipality? So there are a lot of plans out there you should be aware of that are behind the scenes, but they're ready to go. Know your child's school evacuation policy. The first thing people want to do when they hear is an emergency, I want to go get my kids. I want to pick them up. Well, you don't have to, but I want to pick them up. I want to go. Know that the school plans call for lockdowns for a number of reasons. And that's to keep the kids safe, until the emergency is over, under control. We know what the emergency is. We know what has to be done. We know if it's safe for you to come to the school and take your kids out. Believe me, if we want your kids taken out of school, we're going to notify you through the Board of Education. They have their calling system. We're going to let you know to come to school. We may do it in an orderly progression. Okay, for example, the seniors, most of them drive, go. Get out, get in your cars and go. The underclassmen may have to do it by class. Freshmen first, sophomores, juniors. That presents a little bit of a problem if you have a student in freshman and junior year, I get that. But the bottom line is we want to avoid a mass conflagration. At the school where everybody's coming together, the streets are clogged, and nobody's getting anywhere doing anything. That's not good either. So every school has an evacuation policy. I believe every parent that has a student in our schools gets that, or the spirit of that. So please know it, follow it, and follow the advice of the school administration as far as emergencies in the schools are concerned. Because they will be working very closely with our police department to determine what the best avenue is of handling this disaster. This is a touchy subject right here. Make sure your car's fuel tank is full. All right, always fuel up before an anticipated storm or other weather event, which most people do. Most people do top their tanks up before a big storm or something like that. If it's a disaster that just happens, without any warning, I mean, you're gonna have what you have in your car. So the only thing I can suggest is never leave your car empty, which a lot of people do. A lot of people, I used to have a buddy that always, rode on empty. He put $5 in back in the day, get a couple gallons of gas, and that's how he went through life. He never filled his tank, even halfway. Some people are like that. That's a little bit dangerous in today's climate. So you always want to make sure you have at least a decent amount of fuel. To do that, you have to drive somewhere effectively. As the mayor already said, I'm not going to repeat that, but when they tell you to go, go. Lock your doors, lock your windows, turn off all main switches and valves. Inform a relative of your destination. Let somebody know where you're going. Now, what we do offer as a service for people going out of town, come to the shelter, just tell us you're going somewhere and give us your name and address, contact numbers. You're not going to enter the shelter, you have maybe no reason to, but you're going to go somewhere else. We like to know where they are, because when we go down here and we see that house, we want to make a notification. If we can't contact it, that's a major problem. So let someone know where you're going. Inform a relative, and watch out, of course, for washed out bridges, roadways, and down electric power lines. Let me just mention this at this point, this is critical. We have excellent reporting agencies that give us a heads up on storms. We know that. The National Weather Service is right up there, the Weather Channel, spot on, right on top of it. And they share information. We have trained spotters in our town. We have about 13 people that are trained weather spotters. And all I have to do is call the National Weather Service and give them our particular scenario here. So, and they depend on that. They depend on that a lot. They even mention that sometimes on the news. So my point is this, you never know where you're going. You could be in a less hazardous situation by staying here than going somewhere else. If you get on a highway with this flash flood occurrence, and you're stuck in traffic bumper to bumper on that highway, similar to what the Parkway goes through when they have heavy rains. And under every bridge there's a pond, you know what I mean? You're not gonna get through that, in a car especially. So sometimes you're better off doing nothing at all, just hunkering down and staying safe where you are, rather than getting in a car and trying to traverse roadways. Because the National Weather Service has just redefined their flash flood warning because it's so critical and so many people are getting stuck. You see all the news stories where the people are on top of their cars, that's a flash flood situation. That's not a regular flood. A regular flood's gonna come up very, very slowly. You've seen it, many people have seen it in our town. It comes up slowly. A flash flood comes down like the ocean when it comes in, on the crest of a wave, when it comes in that quick. And there's just no way to get out of it, and no way to get away from it. It just happens to be quickly. So that's a flash flood. Normal flooding incident, not that it's normal, but you know what I'm talking about. We have time to prepare. We know it's coming. We know the rivers are rising. We have the 4 flood gauges, which, by the way, are on our website, town website. If you go under either Flood Advisory Board or Emergency Management, you will see the 4 flood gauges in our town. Just click on that name, Ramapo River, Quantic River, Wanakee River, and it will bring you right to the flood gauge. It not only shows you the level of the river, but it shows you the crest and where it's going to be 24 hours later, which is a beautiful thing. Okay, so become familiar with that if you have.
And that's a prediction by the Weather Service that will show you just what he's telling you, that crest. Okay, if you see it's going to crest at a major event and you're on the river, you need to start taking precautions. Just because the crest hasn't happened yet, the crest is not going away. Okay, it's just going to be prolonged a little bit before it happens. So it's not, I have some people going, well, it's not high, so I'm not real worried about it. No, that just means 24 hours later or less, it could crest and get into your home. So you have to be prepared for that.
Just to give an example of Washdown Roadways, in Superstorm Sandy, the route that runs through Lavalette, Washdown's main load, what is that,
37.
37? That road was completely washed out. So much so we moved all the infrastructure underneath the piping, the sewer pipes, everything, storm drains. That's a washout. Now we know that's a barrier island, so that was bound to happen given the intensity of that storm, but same thing could happen in our communities around here. because we have rivers that reach pretty good stages with a great torrent of water coming down. And if that should be diverted, it could be diverted very easily by a tree that falls across the river, or by a car that washes into a river and now is a roadblock. It could come over the banks and it could wash out roadways. So you don't want to be driving around in storms, especially with wires down, because you don't know what's live and what's not. And we all know that we always treat electrical wires as if they're live. So don't touch them, don't step on them, don't move them in any way, shape, or form. Never leave your pets behind. Have a plan for them as well in advance. When you know that storm is coming and we might have to evacuate, take your pets somewhere, okay? Wherever, relative, friends that have pets, eliminate the stress on that animal, get the animal out ahead of all the goings on that are gonna happen. We had a flood many, many years ago where people were tying them to their fences in their yards down in the south end, and it was a very horrible thing. Because you know if they're not rescued or somebody doesn't go on and take them, they're gonna be underwater. So please, please take care of your pets in advance and have a place for them to go. Attach IDs to your dogs. Make sure they have a borough license. That's what it's there for. It has a number on it. We can look it up at the police desk and find out whose dog it is and make the appropriate notifications, or cat, whatever the animal is. Remember that shelters do not allow animals, nor do we allow them in boats and rescue boats. People get bit that way because the animals are distressed and they're not acting normally. So we will not have them in a shelter. We had a lot of people here, the last time we had a shelter across the street, we had a lot of people had their pets in their cars. They were coming out of the shelter and feeding them in the cars or the trucks. And we actually would, right there with their pets. People like to be with their pets, I know that, okay? If you have a pet, you know what it's like to be separated from your pet. So have an arrangement where they're gonna be with people who you know and feel comfortable with. Now, I don't know what you have to come up with that, but come up with something. Have a list of hotels in the area that are pet friendly. The last thing you want to do is have the dog in the car and go to a hotel and you can't get in with the dog or the cat. So in advance, you may want to work on that. As far as the shelter, we don't allow alcoholic beverages, pets, weapons, or anything like that. All medications that are brought in, regardless of whether they're prescribed or just over the counter, they have to be locked up by our staff. Our CERT people have a lockbox, they put them in with your name on them so that when you need them, you come, we give them indispensable. We don't want drugs going around the shelter, whether they be prescription drugs or over the counter or anything else. We will tell you when it's clear to go back to your homes. If there's an event where you've been evacuated, we will tell you when it's good to go back. Don't go back early because they're not going to let you in. All right, here's some preparation for storms. Clear and clean your gutters, just like we've cleaned and cleared the rivers. Okay, clear and clean your gutters, downspouts, and culverts. Allow that water someplace to go. If it's backed up and it gets jammed, it's going to come into your home, under your shingles. You're going to have major structural damage to your home. Clean out your basement window wells around the windows. Okay, so that the water that goes in will drain and will perk into the ground. If it can't perk, the well's going to fill up. It's going to come over the top of the basement window into your basement. Cover items that will hold or catch water. Batten down the hatches. Tie down plastic aluminum chairs. Close your patio umbrellas and secure pop-up tents. If we have a wind warning, we had a couple recently. Good high wind warnings, 50-mile-an-hour gusts. Secure loose garbage cans, toys, and pool items so that you don't have to go to your neighbors across town to retrieve them. All right, thunder and severe storms. Okay, thunder. A lot of deaths in the United States due to thunder and lightning storms, electrical storms. Very dangerous. So if you hear thunder, the cliche is if thunder roars, go indoors, and just keep that in mind. Generators we talked about, never inside 10 feet from a structure. Carbon monoxide gases are deadly. Please make sure you have a carbon monoxide detector on every level of your home. I even have one in my garage. Okay, because carbon monoxide is deadly, it's colorless, odorless, tasteless. You will not know it's there, and it could kill you.
A little funny story on that. Just a couple months ago, we had a CO2 detector in my house. I wasn't home. My wife panicked because it started ringing, called the fire department. The whole fire department showed up. She was outside. I didn't know, she didn't know, they have a 10-year battery life on them, and they beep at the 10th year, and they start beeping because of that. So that's something just to keep in mind. Those CO2 detectors have a lifespan on them with a built-in battery that you cannot replace, so you have to replace the whole unit. So, of course, I didn't know that, and I've taken this seminar 25 times, so it's just something to keep in mind.
Well, that's relatively recent, man, with the 10 years, and you brought up a good point. Besides the batteries going, what also goes in them after 10 years is the sensing device that actually does the work, that sees the particles of carbon and oxygen. So that's why they're now saying 10 years and replace. As a matter of fact, all of our residents, whenever they change their batteries in their detectors, they should check the date on them. If they're older than 10 years old, throw them out, go up to the hardware store or wherever you make your purchase and get those. Don't even waste your time on batteries if it's over 10 years old. They're trying to phase them all out. Severe thunderstorm watches, when they say the word severe, they mean just that. So please take the appropriate action during those types of events. We talked about flooding watches. All right, we'll leave you with this. Cars can be swept away in 1 foot of water. A car can start floating sideways. Okay, 1 foot, that's all it takes. Remember that floor plan now on the cars, the floor pan is solid. It's like a boat. So as soon as that water comes up, it's going to lift that car up. It's going to start moving where you want it to go. There's over 100,000 thunderstorms in the United States each year. That thunderstorms spurn tornadoes. I hope people realize that. A lot of people say, well, we've had tornadoes. What causes them? Well, thunderstorms. And the thunderstorms have been more severe over the last couple of years. You should not, they had over 1,200 touchdowns, by the way, in the United States each year of tornadoes. Countrywide, 1,200 touchdowns. Some of them are for a minute, some of them for 30 minutes, and wipe out a whole town. There's just one town this past summer that got wiped out completely by a tornado. You should not walk in water over 6 inches deep, especially if it's morning. Okay, if it's got a good flow to it, it'll take you with it. 6 inches is just enough to knock you on your feet, off your feet. So be very careful. And hurricane winds can range from 74 miles an hour to more than 150. That's the Saffir-Simpson scale. And depending on the wind speed, we're going to have either minor, moderate, or major damage are the 3 categories. And we do that during recovery. We do the damage assessment. Tropical storms we've been through. We know that we had a very active year last year. I don't know if the prediction yet hasn't come out yet this year from the National Weather Service. But last year and the year before, very active hurricane seasons. Matter of fact, I think 2 or 3 years ago they ran out of names, and they had to start some new names. Prepare in advance for these storms. Don't just blow it off, because those storms can change track overnight. So even though you're looking at it tonight and you're seeing the track, you go to bed and wake up the next morning, it could have changed track. Okay, the wind currents coming in, all sorts of things can happen that will make that thing go off track. So keep a constant eye on your favorite weather channel. I don't predict the weather. I know you'll see some OEM sites where they do, they post the weather. I don't predict the weather. It's on every channel on television. So go to a good weather channel that you trust, or dial up the National Weather Service on the internet, and you get all the information you want. And after hurricane, don't drive unless necessary. Remember, there's going to be a lot of debris down, trees down, wires down, holes in the roadway, streets undermined. There was just a picture on Facebook yesterday and today of a truck that went to repair a sinkhole on the highway. When it pulled up to the sinkhole, the whole truck went under, almost halfway. The sinkhole became much bigger. So sinkholes, you don't even see them under the pavement. The pavement is flat, it looks fine, but there's nothing under it, it's all washed out. So stay away from that. Don't even go near that. Call 911 only for emergencies. We say that all the time, and people call for the darndest of things that are nowhere near even an emergency, and that puts our operators and other people in jeopardy because they're tying up those lines. Check your own home for damage. Again, take pictures. You will be advised that there's a boil water situation in our town. The MUA is very strict on that. They're very on top of that. If we feel there's a breach to that municipal water supply system, they start testing immediately. And they do a number of tests throughout the event to check for coliform out, obviously, in the event that we have to issue a boil water. And our system has always withstood, and I'm not gonna work, all right, the events that we've had over the last, I want to say 10 years. I can't remember the last boil advisory. I think it was when we had the pipe break on that hill there, on the side of the hill. So if in doubt, I tell people, boil. If you're in doubt about the quality of the water as far as coliform and contamination, boil the water. But it can be used to wash, it can be used to shower. You don't have to boil it for that. You only have to boil it to drink, basically. Wash clothes in it. That's not going to be an issue. But we will tell you, obviously we'll tell you, if there's a need to boil water. And if the internet systems are down or phones are down, we'll come through with loudspeakers, we'll let you know. Because that's an important thing. During a tornado warning, we're starting to see them more. Designate a shelter in your home. A lot of our homes don't have shelters. I realize that a lot don't even have basements. So come up with an alternative. It's not get in your car, because the car is no good in a tornado. You want to go as low as you can go, interior of the house, stay away from windows, or go in the hallway on the ground floor. Because the hallway, you have two walls next to you, and then you've got two additional walls where the outside of the house is. And that's what we used to do in schools. If you remember school drill, we used to go in the hallways because it's the strongest part of the structure of the building. And it's the safest because there's no windows. It's that simple. Leave your vehicles, seek shelter in a sturdy building. Don't go under a bridge or overpass. There have been instances where the bridge was actually lifted off the pilings and then collapsed, killed people. So don't go under, an overpass thinking it's a safe place to be. During an earthquake, we have the Ramapo Fault in our vicinity. If you're inside a building, stay there, hide under a table or desk, or crouch in a corner, or against a wall. Use a doorway for shelter only if you know it's strongly supported. Stay away from windows and bookcases. If in a vehicle, stay inside of it, or park in a safe place away from hazards. That's during an earthquake. Now, before I forget, we have these booklets for our citizenry. Preparedness guides, covers everything that we covered tonight, but in a little more depth. And then we have refrigerator magnets. We have them right here at the Borough Hall. So if you want a refrigerator magnet with a list of things to be prepared for, if you have to leave your home, it's right here. And then we also have the booklets, and they are in the Borough Clerk's office here at the Municipal building. Stop in, pick one of each up, or how many you want. We have plenty of them. And post them in conspicuous places in your home and review them. All right, we talked about our notification. We have Civic ready, we have flood sirens. During a flood emergency, we shut off the sirens to the fire department. We don't use them for fires because we don't want confusion, by the general public. So the minute we know that there's an impending flood, we notify headquarters not to blow the sirens or sound the sirens because we don't want people thinking that's a flood warning. Okay? And
So that's something I get a lot of calls on with the new residents. They hear the sirens going off during flooding events and they don't know what they're for. For new residents watching this, if you hear a siren going off and it's a rain event or there's a lot of water around, that's because the rivers are starting to reach their overflow or reaching their spill capacity. You should take aware of that, look for some more information. You might get a reverse 911 call, but that's what they're about. A lot of residents, why is there a siren going off every 10 minutes? And
we hear Riverdale sirens very clearly, and also the Quantics, not as clearly, but we can hear them, especially in the south end of our town. So a lot of times the Riverdale siren will go off and we'll think that it's for our town, it's not. We have WGHT, they still broadcast 1500 AM, 98.3 FM. We have portable PA systems, and then as the mayor said, we would have as a last resort door-to-door notifications when we come and tell you to get out. So we're not going to leave anybody out there unnotified if we can help it. We're going to make every effort to employ these different devices so that we can do it. All right, just to mention about our CERT team, it's Neighbors Helping Neighbors. Volunteers have taken training, 20 hours of training. We have educated over 130 people. We have 62 or 63 active members.
very active.
And they are very active, yes, extremely active and well organized. Okay, so if anybody wants to join our CERT team, go to our website, town website, and you can get a hold of the coordinator for the CERT team. we'd be happy to send you the information that you need to know. So you can help out your family and your community as well. All right, that's about it. I just want to read our last sign off here, and that is this. First of all, thank you in advance for preparing yourself and your family for disasters. If you haven't, please do so. We must, as a society, teach our residents, young and old, to help themselves as much as possible, due to the fact that in a storm or disaster, many times local emergency resources are overwhelmed, and they are. And those people, many of them, become victims themselves. So learn how to help yourselves, keep your family safe, keep your neighbors safe, and your neighborhoods, and it makes life a little bit easier, during difficult times. So thank you for watching this presentation. Thank you, Mayor, as well, for your support, continued support of OEM CERT, and everything that we need to do the job that we're supposed to do. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you.